The morning began like every other, with the scent of maple syrup and too much coffee. Eric Vale stood barefoot in the kitchen, spatula in hand, flipping a lopsided pancake while the cartoon voices from the living room television echoed faintly down the hallway. The early sun filtered through the blinds, casting long yellow stripes across the faded tile floor. He hadn't slept much. He rarely did these days. Lily's backpack sat by the door, unzipped, crayons spilling from the side pocket, like forgotten secrets. She was 7, bright-eyed, too smart, too much like her mother. He called out, "Lily, breakfast's up. Shoes on, please." No answer, just the shuffle of socks on carpet and the thump of something falling upstairs. Behind him, the coffee machine sputtered like it was dying. He poured himself a cup anyway. Across the counter, a second mug already waited. Jason's mug. Raiders logo, chipped near the rim. Jason Reed emerged from the hallway yawning, shirtless, his joggers hanging low on his hips. His hair was a mess, of blonde coils and sleep. He grabbed the mug without a word. "Mornin'," Eric muttered. Jason grunted, sipping. "Burned it again?" "Just crispy," Eric said. They ate in silence, the kind that only old friends could pull off without discomfort. Jason had been living with them since after Julie died. It was supposed to be temporary, but 2 years later, here they were. "You're on Lily pickup today?" Jason asked between bites. Eric nodded. "Yeah. Interview at noon, then grocery run." Jason scratched his jaw absently. "Thought we just stocked up last week." Eric didn't respond. Money was tight, tighter than he liked to admit. He'd been out of work since last April. Things were getting harder. At 9:17 a.m., as Eric washed dishes and Lily tied her shoelaces on the couch, his phone rang. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Vale?" The voice was clipped, professional. "This is Stephanie with Ameritrust Bank. We're calling to verify a recent withdrawal." "It was flagged due to the amount." Eric wiped his hands on a towel. "What withdrawal?" "A transfer of $82,450 from your joint savings account, finalized yesterday." He froze. I didn't authorize that. Joint savings?" His voice cracked. "That account's frozen. It's for my daughter." There was a pause. Then the voice returned, softer. "We can send you a breakdown of activity, sir, but the transaction has already cleared." Eric's mind raced. That money was everything. His wife's life insurance, Lily's school fund, what little safety he'd scraped together in a world that kept taking things from him. He turned around slowly. Jason stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, smiling, faintly like nothing had happened. The mug lifted again to his lips. Eric's fingers curled into a fist around the phone. Something wasn't right, and suddenly the morning didn't smell like syrup anymore. It smelled like fire. Eric didn't say a word the rest of the morning. He got Lily to school, nodding through her chatter as her tiny hands played with the zipper on her jacket. He kissed her forehead before she hopped out of the car and waved back at him through the classroom gate. He managed to smile. Then he drove home and sat in the driveway for nearly 10 minutes, engine running, eyes locked on the steering wheel. Jason's car was gone. Inside, the house was quiet, the silence thick with unanswered questions. Eric walked to the kitchen, stood in front of the counter, and stared at the spot where Jason always left his laptop. Not there. His chest tightened. Then, a sound. From the hallway. He followed it. Jason's door was ajar, just barely. The room was dark, window blinds drawn. A whirring sound pulsed low from within. Eric stepped inside. Jason's laptop glowed, faintly from the corner desk. Screen unlocked. Eric knew it was wrong. But whatever morality once held him back had crumbled with that phone call. He sat down. The browser was already open to a financial dashboard. Sleek, dark interface. Not Ameritrust. Not any bank Eric recognized. A flag in the top right corner said, Cayman Private Holdings. His breath caught. The account total blinked. $147,285.73. He stared, then clicked through. Dozens of transactions, dates going back months, wire transfers, silent deposits, aliases, EV. LV, even one under Julie's initials. His dead wife. Eric leaned back, hands shaking. This wasn't just theft. This was identity. His family, their names, used like tools, like shells, to hide money that should have never existed. He clicked a folder labeled 2022 B accounts. Inside were spreadsheets, dozens of rows, transfers made from one shadowed entity to another. A few had notes. One said, "Tuition dummy, Lily V." The room felt suddenly ice cold. The cursor hovered. Then he clicked another tab. A chat box popped up. The most recent message. "Final move clears in 3 days. Then we cut." Eric's stomach dropped. He didn't know who "we" was, but something told him Jason had been planning this for longer than Eric could guess. He heard the garage door. Panic surged through his chest. He slammed the laptop closed and rushed out, heart racing. He barely made it to the kitchen before Jason walked in, carrying a bag of groceries and whistling. "Back already?" Jason asked. Eric forced a smile. "Interview got canceled." Jason dropped the keys in the bowl by the door and set the bag down. "Damn, that sucks." He started unpacking. Eggs, juice, a small box of chocolates. "For Lily," he said, casually, noticing Eric watching. Eric nodded, jaw clenched. Jason turned away to put the milk in the fridge. "You okay, man?" Eric's voice was steady. "Yeah, just tired." Jason smiled faintly, back still turned. "You should get some sleep." That night, Eric lay awake in bed, listening to the soft hum of the air conditioner and the quiet creaks of Jason moving around downstairs. Every sound felt sharper, more calculated. He reached for his phone and opened the banking app again. Balance 0.00. Jason had stolen more than money. He had taken trust, years, safety, identity, and for the first time since Julie died, Eric felt something deeper than grief. He felt rage. The next morning, Eric waited. He didn't eat, didn't sleep. He just waited, watching Jason move around the house with the same practiced calm, the same careless grin, like nothing had happened. By noon, Jason grabbed his gym bag, mumbled something about hitting the track, and walked out the door. The moment the engine faded down the street, Eric went straight for the laptop. He plugged in a flash drive from his old police reserve days, one he hadn't touched in years, and sat down in front of Jason's computer like it was a bomb he was willing. To trigger, the login was still cached. No password required. Click. The Cayman portal opened. He downloaded everything, every spreadsheet, every folder. Then he dug deeper. There was a folder buried within another, labeled simply Insurance. Inside, Eric found photos, dozens of them. Some were scanned documents, his marriage certificate, Julie's death record, old bank statements. Others were pictures, taken with a phone, judging by the angles. His house, his car, Lily in the front yard. One photo stopped him cold. It was Lily, wearing her red jacket, drawing with chalk on the driveway. The image was time-stamped April 2nd, 2:36 p.m. Eric remembered that day. It was the first time Lily had drawn a heart with her mother's name inside it. He'd been inside, crying in the kitchen. But this photo, Jason hadn't been home, or so he thought. Beneath the image was a file labeled LV Tuition Shell, final.pdf. It was a fake scholarship application, with Lily's full name, birth date, and SSN, used to justify a $25,000 transfer under a fake education initiative. Jason had used his daughter, not just as cover, as a tool, a shield, a pawn. Eric's hands trembled, his eyes blurred. This wasn't desperation. It was cold calculation. Jason hadn't just stolen from them. He'd built an entire world of financial fraud using their lives as insulation. Like they were just names, just data. There were 3 aliases listed across multiple accounts: EV Holdings, LV Futures, JV1, Julie Vale, Lily Vale, Eric Vale. Every person he loved had been turned into a shell account. A deep roar of betrayal began to rise in his chest. He leaned back in the chair, staring up at the ceiling like it might fall in on him. Then the chat box pinged again. A new message. He should be gone by Friday. We'll file the final pull then. Cayman freeze date confirmed. Clean exit. Gone by Friday. Eric read the line 5 times. Jason wasn't just stealing, he was planning to disappear. 3 days from now. And Eric? He was disposable. There was a knock at the door. Eric nearly jumped out of his skin, but it was only the mailman. A moment later, the truck rumbled away. He closed everything and shut the laptop, heart still thudding. Jason returned that evening, sweat-drenched, towel around. His neck joking about how the gym was full of idiots who don't re-rack their weights. He tossed Eric a protein bar and laughed like it was any other day. Eric forced a nod. How was the run? Brutal, Jason said. You know, we should take Lily to the lake this weekend. Get some sun before school starts. Eric smiled. But inside, something had already broken. That night, he sat alone in the garage, staring at the flash drive clutched in his fist. Rage burned slow and quiet, like coals under ash. Julie had trusted Jason once. Eric had called him a brother. Lily loved him, and Jason had sold all of that for Cayman wire codes and private account numbers. As he closed the garage door, Eric didn't know exactly what he'd do yet. But he knew this. Jason wouldn't make it to Friday. The next 3 days felt like a countdown. Eric couldn't stop. Jason acted the same. Casual, confident, almost too much so. He cooked dinner one night, even he offered to help Lily with her math homework. His charm was sickening now. Every smile a knife Eric could feel but couldn't show. Eric stopped sleeping. His eyes burned. His hands shook. He didn't tell Lily anything, just held her a little longer every night and told her she was safe. He couldn't go to the police, not yet, not without everything, so he became a watcher. Jason's movements were meticulous. He left for the gym at odd hours, never carried a phone in the open, and always took the same black duffel bag with him, no matter where he went. Once Eric spotted cash tucked between protein powder and folded workout shirts. On Wednesday night, Jason told Eric he'd be gone for a quick meeting downtown. Just a networking thing. His smile didn't reach his eyes. As soon as the car disappeared around the block, Eric grabbed his keys and followed. He kept his distance, headlights off, a hoodie over his head, even though he was sweating. Jason drove past Fremont Street, through the old industrial corridor, then pulled into a dimly lit parking lot behind a shuttered pawn shop. Eric parked a block away and crept up on foot. From behind a rusted fence, he watched. Jason stepped out of the car, duffel in hand, and stood beneath a flickering security light. A second vehicle arrived minutes later, dark blue SUV, no plates. A man in a gray coat got out. They didn't shake hands. No words, at least not loud ones. Jason handed over the bag. The man popped the back of the SUV, placed it inside, and locked. And then he gave Jason something. A small silver case, like a hard drive. Jason tucked it under his arm and smiled. Eric's stomach twisted. He couldn't hear them, but he could feel the energy. Tense, fast, final. This wasn't a networking meet. This was a deal, a closing. Jason was moving money, and this was the final piece. The SUV pulled away without headlights. Jason got back in his car and sat there for a long minute, staring straight ahead like he was already somewhere else. Eric slipped back to his car before he could be seen. At home, Jason returned like nothing had happened. He kicked off his shoes, microwaved leftover pasta, and asked if Eric wanted to watch a game. Eric just stared at the television, pretending to nod, but his mind was already somewhere else. He knew now, without question, that Jason was finishing the job. 3 days. Just like the message. Jason was leaving, and he didn't plan on saying goodbye. Eric stood in the kitchen later that night, staring out the dark window, heart pounding so hard he could hear it. He had less than 72 hours to stop this, and, for the first time, he wasn't sure the law could save them. It had started with lasagna. The day after Julie's funeral, Eric came home to find Jason standing on his porch, holding a foil-covered tray and wearing a shirt 2 sizes too big. His eyes were red, his voice was low. "I figured you hadn't eaten." Eric hadn't. He let him in. That was the first time. They'd met years earlier, briefly, through Julie's cousin at a barbecue. Jason had worked in finance back then, something about risk portfolios and private placements. Eric never paid attention, but Jason remembered him. And when Julie died in the car crash, Jason showed up like a lifeline. At first it was small things, mowing the lawn, watching Lily for an hour so Eric could sleep, fixing the garbage disposal when it jammed. Then came the offer. "You shouldn't be alone in this house, man. I've got savings. I can help. I'll chip in. Just until you get back on your feet." Eric hesitated. He was drowning in grief and unemployment. Jason's offer felt like mercy. He moved in that fall. At first it worked. Jason made breakfast, helped with Lily's school projects, kept the fridge stocked. He even set up a joint savings account. "For the house," he said. "Make bills easier." Eric remembered how grateful he'd felt, how stupid that felt now. There had been signs, of course. Jason always locked his bedroom door. He took phone calls outside. One time, Eric caught a glimpse of a banking interface on Jason's laptop that didn't look like anything local, but Jason brushed it off as an old account. And once, drunk on the porch, Jason had said something Eric would never forget. "You ever feel like life just resets itself? Like all the rules change and you're the only one who didn't get the memo?" Eric had laughed awkwardly. Jason hadn't. Now sitting alone in the living room, Eric looked around the house. Every framed photo, every toy Lily left lying on the carpet, every crack in the wall Jason had offered to patch. It wasn't just the money Jason had stolen. It was the trust, the silence, the place grief had carved out. And Jason had filled so perfectly. He thought back to something Julie once said, years before the crash, after one of their many arguments. Not all poison tastes bitter at first. He hadn't understood it then. He did now. Jason hadn't forced his way in. Eric had opened the door and begged him to stay. The drawer didn't open easily. It was locked with a small pad Jason had attached a few months ago, just to keep Lily out of my work stuff, he'd said. But now, with Jason out on another late-night errand, Eric had time, and he had a crowbar. It didn't take much. One sharp twist, and the lock gave way with a metallic crack. The drawer slid open like it had been waiting. Inside was a small black case, a money clip with $300 in cash, and a USB drive labeled in Jason's careful, all-caps handwriting, "Insurance, Eric." Stared at it. His hands were sweating as he carried the drive to his room, closed the door, and booted up his old laptop, the one Julie used to use. He plugged it in. No password. No tricks. The folder loaded instantly. It was neatly organized, titled EVL Trust. Eric clicked the first file. It was a photo. Lily, again, at the park, swinging, laughing. But it wasn't the photo that stopped his breath. It was the metadata, taken on Eric's phone. He'd never taken that picture. Click. Another file, a PDF this time. A notarized document. A power of attorney form. Forged signature. His own name, written in a style he hadn't used in years. Another, tax forms. Adjusted returns from 3 years ago, showing donations Eric never made and accounts he'd never seen. Then the videos, short clips, silent. One showed Eric asleep on the couch while Lily watched cartoons in the background. The angle was high, like from a vent or corner of the room. Another showed Eric typing on his computer. Jason's reflection visible in the microwave. Phone raised. Eric's mouth went dry. Jason hadn't just stolen his money. He'd studied him. Built a dossier. A life. A profile to hide behind. Then Eric opened the last file. LV final batch.pdf. It was a table of account transfers. 7 entries. One of them, dated just last week, was a $24,000 wire routed through an entity called Lily Educational Fund. Eric stared at the row. The recipient, an account in Belize. The authorization code, Julie's old email, used after her death. He clutched his stomach. For a moment he thought he might throw up. This wasn't just fraud. It was desecration. Jason had dragged every part of their lives, Julie's memory, Lily's identity, into his scheme, not as cover, but as scaffolding, as tools. The final row chilled him most. Scheduled transfer, Friday. Amount $98,000, destination, Cayman primary, final consolidation. It was the last move. Jason was cashing out, and Eric, he was the paper-thin alibi left behind. He closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair, blinking at the ceiling. Everything, every lie, every breakfast, every quiet joke about money, had been part of the mask. Jason wasn't just hiding what he did. He was hiding who he was. Eric walked to Lily's room, cracked the door, and stared at her sleeping form. She was curled up, stuffed bare in her arms, thumb near her lips. He wanted to protect her more than anything. But now, the danger wasn't just outside. It had been living down the hall the whole time. Eric waited until Sunday morning. The house was quiet. Lily was at a sleepover, the sun just beginning to rise. Jason sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, reading something on his phone. Calm, unbothered. Eric stepped into the room, jaw clenched. "We need to talk." Jason looked up, eyebrows raised. "Sure. What's up?" Eric took a deep breath. "I want you out of the house." Jason blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said pack your things. I want you gone." Jason stared for a moment, then set his phone down slowly. "That's kind of sudden." "No," Eric said. "It's overdue." Jason leaned back in the chair, exhaled. "This about the bank stuff again? I told you, man, that wasn't me." Eric's hands tightened into fists. "You really think I haven't seen the files?" Jason's expression didn't change. Not anger, not guilt, just calculation. "What files?" he said softly. Eric stepped closer. "The offshore accounts, the photos, the tuition fund in Lily's name. Everything. I know what you're doing." A pause. Then Jason smiled. "Look, I know things look bad, but you have no idea how deep this goes. You think I'm the only one? I don't care who else is involved. I want you gone." Jason stood up slowly. His voice dropped. "You do realize you need me, right?" Eric laughed bitterly. "For what? Stealing from my daughter? Pretending to be her uncle while gutting her future?" Jason stepped closer. "For keeping this place alive. I've paid the mortgage. I paid when you couldn't. I bought groceries, covered bills. You think you're some noble single dad scraping by, but this house? It runs because of me." Eric didn't flinch. Jason's voice softened. "I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it to survive? You think this world rewards good people?" Eric's voice came out hard. "Pack your things." Jason smiled again. "Okay." He sat back down, picked up his coffee, and sipped. "Just give me 2 weeks." Eric narrowed his eyes. "You have 3 days." Jason's smile widened. "We'll see." That night, the house felt different, quieter, but not in the peaceful way. Jason didn't speak at dinner, didn't turn on the TV, didn't complain about the trash or leave his shoes out. He just existed, like a shadow taking up space. Eric triple-locked his door that night, slept with the flash drive under his pillow. By morning, Jason was already gone. Gym bag missing, coffee mug washed. Eric stood in the living room, breathing heavily, heart pounding. Jason wasn't leaving. Quietly. He wasn't leaving at all. The war had started, and it was happening under his roof. Jason had always underestimated Eric's silence. He thought it meant submission, weakness, a man too broken by grief to fight back. But silence had its own sharpness. It gave Eric time to think. The flash drive stayed hidden, taped to the underside of a dresser drawer. But now he needed more. Proof that could speak, even when he couldn't. So on a cold Tuesday afternoon, while Jason was gone and Lily was at school, Eric dug through the box in the garage labeled Junk Tech. Inside was an old audio recorder, still functional, battery rusted at the edges. He tested it, static, then a click. Then it worked. He planted it behind a dusty shelf in the living room, facing the spot Jason always stood to take calls. Eric knew his routines, knew that Jason never talked in his bedroom or bathroom. Always here, pacing slowly, phone at his ear. low voice blending into the hum of the house. For 3 nights, Eric waited. Jason came home, ate, scrolled through his phone, fell asleep on the couch, but said nothing of value. Then came Thursday. It was past midnight. Eric had been lying awake, staring at the ceiling, when he heard Jason's voice. Soft, serious. He crept to the hallway and waited. The conversation was short. No names, just code. We're good to move. He still doesn't know the depth. Thinks it's about the girl's account. A pause. No, he won't go to the cops. He's soft. Keeps second-guessing. It's his nature. Another pause. Final pull is tomorrow. Then Cayman goes dark. I'll be gone before he even knows what hit him. Eric's heart thudded in his ears. He waited until the house was quiet again, until Jason's breathing turned to the steady rhythm of sleep, and then he retrieved the recorder. He played it back 3 times, sitting in the dark kitchen with nothing but the buzzing of the fridge to keep him company. Each time it felt heavier. Like the floor was sinking beneath him, gone before he knows what hit him. Jason wasn't just planning to leave, he was planning to leave Eric behind. Blindsided, broke, ruined, or worse. The next morning, Eric watched Lily eat her cereal with one leg swinging under the table. She giggled at something on her tablet and looked up at him with eyes that had never known betrayal. He tried to smile, but it came out crooked. Jason breezed into the kitchen 5 minutes later, fresh from a shower, humming some tune, phone in hand. "Morning, sunshine," he said to Lily. She waved, cereal spoon in her mouth. Then to Eric. "Big day?" Eric shook his head. "Just errands." Jason grinned. "Well, I've got my own business to handle today. Could be the last big." "Move, huh?" Eric said nothing. Jason poured himself a cup of coffee and leaned on the counter, looking out the window like he owned the view. Eric's eyes never left him. That afternoon he transferred the recording to his laptop, labeled it, saved it twice, made a backup, printed the transcript and folded it neatly, sliding it into an envelope labeled, "If something happens." He stared at the envelope for a long time. Jason had underestimated a lot of things, but tomorrow Eric wouldn't be silent. He'd be ready. Eric had rehearsed this moment 100 times in his head. Every conversation, every confrontation, every step Jason might take. But nothing could prepare him for the smell of fear mixing with the faint scent of burnt coffee as he stepped into the kitchen that evening. Jason was leaning against the counter, towel over his shoulder, a smirk playing on his lips. "So you finally found your courage, huh?" he asked, voice smooth, almost teasing. Eric's hands were shaking, but he forced them to steady. "This ends tonight. No more hiding. No more lies." Jason laughed softly, and it echoed against the tiled walls. "You really think you know what's going on? That you can stop this? You've been out of your depth since Julie died." "Know enough," Eric said, voice low. "Dangerous. I know you stole from my family. I know what you've done with Lily's name, with her life, and I'm done letting you walk away with it." Jason straightened, a glint of amusement still in his eyes. "And what? You think the law will save you? That's cute. You're weak. Always were." Eric took a step closer, fists clenching. Every memory of betrayal, of every night he lay awake, wondering how someone he trusted could lie so perfectly, surged through him. He remembered Lily drawing hearts in the driveway, Jason photographing her like she was part of some ledger, Julie's death twisted into this grotesque financial game. Jason noticed the change, the intensity, and his smirk faltered for just a second. "Eric." But it was too late. Something inside him snapped. Rage and fear combined into a single, sharp clarity. He lunged for the meat tenderizer that had been sitting on the counter, just out of Jason's reach moments ago. Jason raised, his hands startled. "Wait." Eric swung. The sound of metal connecting with flesh was worse than he imagined. Jason stumbled back, crashing against the refrigerator. Blood splattered across the white tiles, stark, shocking. Eric's ears rang. He dropped the tenderizer and staggered, heart hammering. Jason coughed, gripping his side, eyes wide with disbelief. "Eric." "What?" Eric froze, stomach twisting as the enormity of what he'd just done sank in. You were going to ruin us," he said, voice shaking. "I couldn't let you." Jason's knees buckled. He fell to the floor with a groan, blood pooling beneath him, spreading across the cracks in the tile. His eyes searched Eric's for understanding, for mercy, but found only rage and despair. Eric dropped to his knees, chest heaving. He didn't know whether to check for a pulse or run. The room smelled of iron and sweat, of betrayal made tangible. Every instinct screamed, but none could untangle the chaos inside him. For a long moment, all that existed was the stark fluorescent light above them, the slick red sheen, and the hollow echo of Jason's shallow breaths. Finally, Eric sat back, on his heels, staring at the carnage. He could hear Lily's laughter from upstairs in his memory, Julie's voice in his mind, the phone call from the bank ringing like a bell. He couldn't silence. The quiet was unbearable. He wiped his hands, on a dish towel now soaked with more than flour and syrup, and stood looking down at Jason. I didn't want it to end this way," he whispered. Jason coughed again, faint, weak, but alive. Just barely. His smirk was gone, replaced with something Eric couldn't name. Fear, shock, something raw. Eric backed toward the door, mind spinning. He needed to protect Lily. He needed to erase this, hide it, survive it. But he knew in that moment, nothing would ever be the same. The tiles gleamed under the harsh light. Blood, betrayal, rage, and the first irreversible step toward what Eric now understood as the life he had to live, forever haunted by the choices he had made. Eric woke to sunlight spilling through the blinds, warm and cruel. The quiet of the house pressed in on him like a weight, heavier than any guilt he'd carried before. He could still see the tiles in the kitchen, glistening with the memory of last night, the metallic scent lingering in the corners of his mind. Lily's laughter echoed down the hallway as she got ready for school. She didn't know. Couldn't know. And Eric wasn't sure he could tell her without breaking her in ways he wasn't prepared to fix. He walked into the kitchen, carefully ignoring the corner where the blood had been cleaned, but the memory hadn't. He prepared pancakes, eggs, the usual breakfast, trying to mimic the normalcy of their mornings before everything had shifted. Lily bounded in, backpack half slung, hair sticking out of its ponytail like she hadn't seen a brush all week. "Morning, Daddy," she chirped, voice bright and untainted. Eric forced a smile. "Morning, Pumpkin. Hungry?" She nodded, pulling out a chair. He placed a plate in front of her, syrup steaming slightly, eggs fluffy and golden. He watched her eat, small hands gripping the fork, chewing slowly, completely unaware. Every bite was a reminder of what he had to protect, and of what he had done. He wiped his hands on a towel, feeling the phantom weight of yesterday. Every muscle ached from the confrontation, from the panic, from the raw anger that had driven him past his own limits. And still, his hands shook, faintly, as he poured juice. He could see the faint reddish tint under his fingernails. He hoped the cleaning had been thorough enough, hoped the day's light would wash away the remnants of violence. Lily looked up suddenly. "Daddy, are you okay?" Her voice was small, concerned. Eric's chest tightened. "I'm fine, baby. Just a little tired." She smiled, unconvinced, and returned to her plate. He swallowed a lump in his throat and focused on making the eggs, syrup pooling in neat circles. Each motion careful, deliberate. Each breath measured. The clock ticked. On, school would call soon. Carpool, PTA emails. Life that had to continue even though it was fractured, bleeding from a wound no one else could see. He forced himself to laugh at something she said, lightly, lifting the mood, and for a moment, it worked. Lily smiled back. The world was still, simple for her, for now. But in the back of Eric's mind, the images of the kitchen tiles, Jason's groaning, the blood slick, played on a loop. Every sound in the house made him flinch. Every shadow felt heavier. He realized something else, something he hadn't allowed himself to think until now. He wasn't just protecting Lily from the outside world. He was protecting her from him. From the part of him that had snapped, that had made irreversible choices. As he kissed her forehead before she ran out the door, Eric whispered to himself, "Whatever it takes, Lily. I'll keep you safe. I swear it." and for the first time in hours, he believed it might be possible. The door closed behind her, and he stood alone in the kitchen, hands trembling again, the faint red under his nails catching the morning light. He breathed slowly, listening to the quiet, waiting for the storm that he knew was coming. Eric didn't sleep that night. Not really. The house was quiet, but every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator, every sigh of the air, vents felt amplified, like they were echoing through a hall of mirrors he could not escape. He had tried, in the pale hours after Lily left for school, to convince himself that the crisis was over, that Jason was incapacitated, the blood cleaned, the immediate threat neutralized, but logic and instinct warred violently in his mind. He, too, booted up the laptop again, the screen reflecting pale blue light on his exhausted face. The flash drive he had pulled from Jason's drawer glowed faintly in his palm. LV, final batch.pdf. That one file had become the nucleus of everything he needed to understand. The web of deceit Jason had spun around their lives, their money, and their daughter. He opened it slowly, careful not to let the urgency of panic distort his reading. The file listed the accounts, the transfers, the aliases, each line meticulously annotated. Each time he saw Lily's name, her life insurance, or Julie's identity used as a digital scaffold, a tight knot of rage and fear tightened in his chest. Eric traced the most recent transactions with his finger, slow, deliberate. Cayman Primary, Belize, shell accounts, trustee names he had never heard, corporate fronts masquerading as educational funds, health initiatives, investment portfolios. Each was a thread leading further from him, from the law, from any chance of recovery. Jason's plan was larger than he had imagined, more complex, more brutal. Then he found it, the last scheduled transfer, the one that would finalize Jason's disappearing act. Amount $98,000. Destination, Cayman Primary, final consolidation. Date, tomorrow morning. Authorization, Julie's old email. Eric pressed his palm to his forehead. Tomorrow? That was less than 24 hours from now. He leaned back in the chair, heart hammering. The room smelled faintly of burnt coffee from yesterday. The refrigerator hummed. Shadows stretched along the walls as the ceiling fan spun lazily. He imagined Jason sleeping somewhere, oblivious, confident, already thinking he was untouchable. Eric's fingers drummed against the desk, a staccato echo of his thoughts. Eric knew he couldn't confront Jason directly. Not yet. Not with the final transfer pending. The stakes were too high. The law wasn't on his side. Not fully, not yet. He needed leverage, evidence, something to make Jason hesitate, even if for a moment. He pulled up the chat logs from Cayman, private holdings. Every note, every message Jason had sent to co-conspirators was here. He read line after line, translating the code in shorthand, imagining the meetings, the quiet phone calls, the careful manipulation. Jason had involved other people, not many but enough. People who would vanish without a trace once the money landed. People who could ruin him, Eric, or worse. Eric closed the files and stood, pacing. He couldn't focus in the chair, couldn't breathe in the stagnant air of the room. His mind ran through scenarios: confront Jason and risk a repeat of last night's chaos, attempt a preemptive transfer block and alert the authorities, somehow intercept the final wire himself. Every option carried a risk, a gamble. But he knew in his bones that inaction wasn't an option. Lily's future, their lives depended on action. He opened the browser and accessed Ameritrust. Slowly, deliberately, he went through the verification process, entering passwords, confirming identities, retracing every transaction he could. His hands shook, the muscle memory of typing complicated by fear and exhaustion. Finally, he located a number, a hotline, a direct line to the department handling suspicious offshore transfers. Eric swallowed hard. He dialed. Ameritrust Fraud Department, a woman answered. Professional, clipped. How may I assist you? He took a deep breath. I need to stop a transfer. It's a wire going out of the country. It's not authorized. It's fraudulent. Please. His voice cracked. It's my family's money. There was a pause. Then questions. Verification. Name. Account number. Social Security, dates, transactions. Each inquiry felt like an eternity. Each response chipped away at his fragile composure. Finally, she said, "Sir, we can put a hold on the account. It will trigger a review. We'll need confirmation in writing." Eric exhaled sharply, relief and panic colliding. This was only the first step. The transfer wasn't canceled yet, only frozen temporarily. Jason could suspect something. He had to act faster. He returned to the USB, cross-referencing every alias, every instruction, every code Jason had used. Then he remembered the recording. From the living room, the conversation about the final pull, about Eric not knowing the depth of the operation. He played it again, listening for nuances, intonations, pauses. Every syllable confirmed the threat. Every inflection confirmed Jason's cold calculation. He printed out the transcript, folded it neatly, taped it into an envelope. Label: if something happens. One copy stayed in his desk, another under Lily's bed, hidden. Evidence ready in case Jason tried to vanish, in case the law questioned, in case the worst came to pass. By the early hours of morning, Eric had a plan forming. He would attend the transfer himself, monitor Jason, and prepare to intervene. He would not go in blind. Not this time. Not when everything hung in the balance: Julie's memory, Lily's future, and the life he was still willing to risk to protect both. The sun began to rise, weak and pale through the blinds. Eric washed his face in cold water, staring at his reflection. Red eyes, tight jaw, trembling hands, but a single certainty. He would see the final transfer, the final betrayal, through. He would face Jason and whatever it required to reclaim control of his life. He would not flinch. Tomorrow, he realized, would decide everything.